Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Warrior Report with head coach Brian Bergstrom. I'm Justin Barrientos. Thank you for joining us here today on HBC TV 25. We're coming to you from the Latch Development Center at 111 Riverfront Street in downtown Winona, and we're brought to you by Russell and Associates. And we're here to talk Warrior football. And unfortunately, this week, Coach, we're talking about a Warrior loss. So before we actually get into the game, I want to find out, what does a loss mean to you as a head coach? Different from when you were a player, when you were an assistant coach. What is it like now?
I think coaches hang on to stuff longer. I remember myself being able to move on quicker as a player, and I would say that they're more resilient in terms of the timeliness that they can move on and really process it for 24 hours, win or loss, and then 24-hour rule, move on. And we certainly need to learn the lessons that came with the loss. But many times the outcome, in my opinion, is overrated, meaning had we came back at the very end and won the game, would that have changed some of the issues that we had at the beginning of the game? No. There's still things that we got to grow in and improve on and win or loss. But I'd certainly hang on to it a little bit longer as a coach.
All right. Well, you took an early lead, and then Bemidji was able to come back. But you just said about some issues that you had at the beginning of the game. What were some of those issues?
Well, nothing in particular, I guess. Just we were losing the game at the end, and certainly had we come back and won, that wouldn't have changed the reasons why we were losing the game in the middle. Okay. But we did challenge our guys. We have to start faster than we had the previous 2 weeks, and that was a win. We at the end of the first quarter was 7-0, and so those are positives we're pulling from the loss. And anytime you lose a game, you're going to face adversity, and that's opportunity to grow. And we're going to do that in wins and losses.
All right. Well, let's talk about the opening score, which is Brian Corbin's junior interception, the pick six. Tell us about that play and what you saw in there.
Yeah, I think our defense really took the challenge of starting fast and didn't give up any points, and had the block or the force the missed field goal. And then anytime you can get a takeaway on defense is positive and swings momentum. And then when you can score in that play, the defense takes a lot of pride in that. And he did a good job, and the guys did a good job of then hustling and making sure that he wasn't going to get tackled. And then the unique thing is they got to get ready to go back out again, which is you don't always do on defense. But that was certainly a positive in the first or at the beginning of the game.
Well, they were able to get a forced fumble then after that. Tell us a little bit about that.
We've been emphasizing on defense, getting after the football and winning the takeaway battle. That was another positive from Saturday, is that we didn't turn the ball over, and we forced turnovers, and the ball was on the ground. We would argue that we had a couple more that didn't go our way, but we're more intentional with punching at the ball. And the more you punch at it, the higher the chances that one time it's going to come out. And it did there, and that's, again, you're stealing possessions. You're stealing it back for your offense.
And then after that, then Bemidji kind of woke up on offense, and they were able to get a couple of touchdowns. What changed from the opening minutes of the game to when Bemidji was able to take a lead?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, there's things that we can correct from not making mistakes in certain areas and being more disciplined in areas. And one of which we just had too many penalties. That was uncharacteristic of us to have as many penalties as we did in the game, and that's starts with me. We have to get that fixed. And when that happens, it kind of puts you behind the eight ball and down in distances. And offensively, it changed the field position a little bit. But at the end of the day, we got out-executed on some plays. But Bemidji has a very talented team. And like we talked about last week, it could be 2-0 going into that game, not 0-2. And their guys made some good plays.
Yeah, I don't really want to harp on it, but I also want to be fair and look at the stats. And the stats say that Bemidji had 520 yards of total offense. So your reaction to that and reaction to why that was, and what changes need to be made in defense, as well as they played, because they were able to get some turnovers and make some big stops. What needs to be fixed for this week?
Yeah, I think the yardage was a is an outcome based off the amount of plays they played. I think defense played 90 or 92 snaps. That's a lot of snaps. That could be 2 games. Like if we could have our defense play around 50 snaps, it's probably a good day. But they were tempos. So the more snaps you have on offense, the more opportunities you have to get yards. And I would say it was a factor of that, and then late in the game, kind of the cumulative effect of guys getting a little bit more tired, and then it's harder to execute. And so I would say the yards came from that and some explosive plays if you have to win it.
All right. You were only down by 10 at the half, which I think you were down at the very first game about that, or maybe even a little bit more, trying to remember what happened there. So what was your message at halftime to your team going into the second half?
The message was basically we're shooting our own foot. You know, it's not that Bemidji's doing things that we hadn't seen, and we lacked discipline at times and had too many penalties and didn't execute. That's kind of what it came down to. We gotta win our one-on-one battle when my number's called, and we can't hurt ourselves with penalties. And when we do that, we'll be just fine. But the main message, I mean, we made some strategic tweaks on offense and defense. It wasn't huge. We were sticking the course. And my message to them is what an opportunity to really show what we're about with grit, with growing, with depending on my teammate. Because that's at halftime and really throughout that game was the greatest adversity that we have faced throughout the year. And it's easy when the sea is calm. It's harder when the waves are crashing over the boat.
Well, the offense did play a little bit better in the second half. You had Trevor Paulson hit Jalen Schleicher for a touchdown. And then later on in the game, Trevor, on a quarterback keeper, was able to score. Tell us a little bit about what you saw in the offense then in the second half.
Well, I think they got into a rhythm, and we were able to see glimpses of what we're capable of on offense from a formational perspective, and then spreading the ball out, and then you start to see momentum and some confidence grow. And the defense and special teams doing a good job of getting them the ball back again, and had them on their heels for a little bit. And so all these things are encouraging, and certainly when we get down there, we got to execute. And it was another positive of the game. I think we were 3 for 3 in the red zone on offense. So we saw glimpses of what we can do.
All right, and then you were also able to get Kyle Haas, backup quarterback, a couple of snaps. Is he kind of your clear number 2? And tell us about the decision to put him in the game.
Yeah, he is our number 2. And but last week we split the reps evenly throughout the week, and we rotated our quarterbacks. Trevor was in for 2 series, then Kyle the next 2, and they alternated for most of the game. At the very end, we kept Trevor in. And that was by design. And in reality, that was our best production quarterback-wise that we've had. And they did a great job of embracing a slightly different plan. We're just trying to find strategies to help the offense click. And they did a great job of handling that.
All right. And is that something that you think that you'll do throughout the season, or is it kind of dependent on how the game is going?
I think, week to week it could be different, but certainly if we go into a game with a prescribed rotation, it'll always kind of depend on how the game's going and how both of them are playing. And you saw a factor of that on Saturday.
All right, and then we have about a minute left in this segment. The run game wasn't as effective as before, but Sam Santiago Lloyd still had a fairly good game. Is it just Bemidji had a really good run defense that you were facing?
Yeah, I think you start to see talent come into play. We were playing a really good team that went deep into the playoffs and last year, and like we talked about, easily could be 3-0 right now after beating us. And yes, they have a very good front, and they did some things that created issues for us. And then in the second half, you saw things open up a little bit because of what we were able to do in the pass game and the RPO game, and broke a few more of those. But when you play good teams, it's not going to be easy to run the football.
All right. Well, the good news is you come home this weekend and you'll face Minnesota State Moorhead. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But we have that to look forward to there. We have a home game this weekend. We're going to take a break here on the Warrior Report, and when we come back, we'll talk with Peyton Dockel, one of the offensive linemen, right after this. And welcome back to the Warrior Report here on HBC TV 25, coming to you from the Latch Development Center at 111 Riverfront Street in downtown Winona. We're brought to you by Russell and Associates. And now to talk a little bit more offense with offensive lineman Peyton Dockel. Peyton, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
So at the beginning of this season, you were named one of the NSIC players to watch on offense, which is kind of a rare thing for an offensive lineman, but I think that speaks to just how well you've been playing your first couple of years in the league. What was it like to you to get that honor?
I think it was a cool honor. Like you said, offensive lineman usually doesn't get it too often, but I think it just went with our team in the past of how many wins we could get. I think that maybe drew a little attention to it, so it's fun to have that.
All right, and for you, for Peyton, I mean, he's obviously been kind of a leader on this team on the offensive line. Coming into this season, what did you know about Peyton, and what have you seen from him in practice and games?
Right. Well, I think I certainly know Peyton a lot better now than I did 9 months ago in January. But what I could tell right away is his leadership. And that's so critical for a football team and an offense. But when you can have that leadership within the offensive line, because so much is driven by how well we can run the ball, how well we can protect the quarterback. And so his leadership is priceless for us.
Now, obviously, protecting the quarterback, setting up the run play, giving your quarterback enough time to find some players downfield to throw it is key. And one of the things I looked up while I was researching you for this interview was penalties. And in your time, you've only been called for 2 penalties in 23, 24 games I think you played. What do you attribute that to? Because I know that's something that the offensive linemen have to watch because the referees are watching you all the time. But only 2 penalties, that's amazing.
Right. I think I take that pretty seriously because obviously we talk all the time how much a penalty can cost us. If you're on second down and you get a 10-yard penalty, that's obviously going to slow the drive down big time. But I think being in a guard and position with a lot of help with your teammates, I think you can get away with a couple of things.
Okay. So what is your technique then like? How do you avoid penalties?
I mean, if you can get your hands inside as a guard and keep your hands locked up, you're pretty well set off.
Okay. So for you as a head coach, I mean, with an offensive line that's not going to draw a lot of penalties, I mean, obviously that makes your job a lot easier, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, we want to play as aggressive as we can, but as clean as we can, so we don't, like we talked about this last Saturday, we had too many penalties. Mm-hmm. So it's a fine line of doing things the right way, and in the trenches, a lot goes on. So you got to be really, really smart and combine that with an aggressiveness, and these guys do a great job of that.
All right. Now, one of the things we've kind of talked about in the past is being able to gel with the rest of your offensive line as teammates, and now you have your coaching staff that you have to kind of figure out and find out what they want from you. How has that process been this season?
It's been a really good turnover. We got Coach Olson coming in as our offensive line. He's got so much experience at every level, from Division I to Division II to starting most games he's ever played in history. But just very encouraging guy. He communicates with us well. I think that's the biggest part. And if we ever have questions for him, we're willing to go to him. If he has questions for us, he asks us during the game what we like, what we don't. He's a very encouraging guy, and it's fun to play for him.
All right. And what have you been able to learn from him?
Anything from technique to just running a whole new offense too. He's just so schematically smart and different labels that we can label our calls, and he's just a very good mind in the game of football.
All right, and besides the player to watch honor, you're named the team captain this year. What does that mean to you, and what are you able to teach the rest of your younger teammates?
I'm very honored to have that. My teammates, that obviously I show leadership to them, but biggest thing is like my leadership. It might not go always vocally, but I just want to put my head down and work hard. And my biggest thing is I just want to win.
All right, and what's your favorite part about playing offensive line?
I would just say sometimes it goes unnoticed in the paper, but when you can get your 5 guys going against their 5 guys, it's nothing better than that.
All right, at the end of the day, what is a success for you after a game as an offensive lineman?
As long as we win. Winning's everything for me.
All right, very good. Well, congratulations on all the accolades that you've gotten, and congratulations on a good season so far, and hopefully a good season the rest of the way.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to take a break here on Warrior Report. When we come back, we will talk defense. That's with Clay Scheffner. That's coming up right after this. And welcome back to the Warrior Report here on HBC TV 25. We are brought to you by Russell and Associates, and we're coming to you from the Latch Development Center at 111 Riverfront Street in downtown Winona. Time now to talk defense with Clay Scheffner. And I think before we get started with anything else, we got to talk about that first game that you had with 17 tackles. My goodness. Tell us a little bit about that game and what you remember from that.
I think it's just a good attribute to our defensive line and how our game plan was that game. You know, our coaches had a good one. Obviously, when you can hold an All-American to under, about 70 yards, I believe he had, that's always a good accomplishment. And he was the focal point of their offense, so I think we just had a good game plan. D-line did their job, and us linebackers were able to flow pretty freely without any climbing offensive linemen or anything like that. So I think it's just an attribute to them and the game plan we had going.
And then this weekend, 14 tackles, I think 7 solo, 7 assisted. So it wasn't just you, it was you kind of working in tandem with your teammates. Tell us a little bit about how this week went for you.
Yeah, Bemidji, they run a big up-tempo offense. They like to run the ball, kind of establish, their identity on the offensive line. So it's just kind of, when they run the ball 56 times, hopefully there's some plays to be made. So I think just like that first week, our D-line did a phenomenal job. Just eating up blocks and everything like that and letting us flow pretty freely as linebackers.
All right. Coach, your thoughts on what Clay has done and coming into the system, what you expected from Clay?
Yeah, well, I expected Clay to be our leader on defense, and he is that. And we have multiple layers of leadership on the football team, whether it's captains or leadership council, but there's something that goes into playing linebacker, especially when you're in the middle. And that's the position Clay plays, and the ability to not only do your own job, because you got to do your own job first, the ability to control traffic in front of you with the D-line, but then communicate behind you with the safeties and the corners. And that's what we lean on Clay to do. And he's a great communicator, off the field certainly, but then on the field with his command and his presence, and does a great job.
All right. Well, we've kind of heard the cliche that the linebacker is kind of the quarterback of the defense. Do you kind of feel that that's kind of the way that you and the linebacker core work?
Yeah, most definitely. Obviously, being the linebacker, being the guy that sets the fronts, makes all the check, you kind of have to be the quarterback. It's the same position, just on the other side of the ball as being the quarterback. So obviously, I take great pride in that, and obviously, communication, like Coach Bergstrom says, has to be at an all-time high. And we preach that every day in our room because it's not just me making checks. If someone else sees it on the field, they got to communicate it so we all can get on the same page. So obviously being in that spot's a good honor. I'm very proud of that spot, but it's not just me out there running everything. It's it's a big cohesive group. So.
All right. Well, starting this season, we've had all the captains on, and we've asked them all the same question. What's the reaction to being named a captain this season?
It's a great honor. I'm glad that my teammates, can look at me as a leader of this team. But obviously, captain's just a label. Obviously there's plenty of people that lead on our team in different ways, and I just got to keep representing myself and as a team, on and off the field, and that's it's a good honor, but comes with a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility that I'm willing to take.
All right, and what are some of the things that you're able to teach your younger teammates?
Just to give it your all. College football is such a small part of your life, and you never want to, overlook any opportunities. Whether you're on the scout team or you're getting off the red shirt lifts in the morning, those are opportunities to get a lot better. To perfect your craft, and just not overlooking any of those opportunities is really big. It makes the most out of your career.
And what, if anything, has kind of changed for you with the new coaching staff? I know Coach Curtin is still there, but what has changed for you?
The defensive scheme changed a little bit. Nothing too major, but that has changed, and just the way that we handle our business is a lot, a lot more mature. They put a lot on us, which is good. We're young men, and we need to, be able to hold that responsibility and that maturity. So I really like that. It makes us grow up. And that's what college is all about, is growing up.
Okay. And one of the things that Coach Bergstrom mentioned was Leadership Council. I know you're a member of that. What is that, and what does that mean to you to be a member of that?
The Leadership Council is kind of just a group of guys that were selected by our position group that, we're like a voice between them and the coaches. And if they need anything, they can always come to us, whether it's issues or just something we need to address during leadership. So that's what that is. And then obviously, just like being captain, it's a great honor. My teammates, look at me as a leader. And, with that, like I said, comes a lot of responsibility, but more than willing to take on that responsibility.
All right. And, as we were saying, with your personal success that you've had this season, and especially against Bemidji, and with what the defense was able to do, Bemidji was still able to get some yards and score some points. So how do you balance what the positives and the negatives, and then move on to this week against Moorhead?
Yeah, we definitely left a lot of plays out there, in my opinion, but, we just need to get those corrected, move on from them, and make sure we don't make the same mistakes twice. Coach Berge talks about, like, during fall camp, you don't make day one mistakes on day two, or you don't make day two mistakes on day three, so we can't make last game mistakes this game. So we just got to correct them, move on, and, just the plays that we know were good, we just got to know that they were good and, keep doing that. Can't, focus on the bad plays so bad that you forget to do the good plays that you did right.
All right. Well, congratulations on what you've been able to do so far this season, and good luck this week against Moorhead.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and we're going to take a break here on Warrior Report, and when we come back, we'll talk about Minnesota State Moorhead, this week's opponent, right after this. And welcome back to Warrior Report here on HBC TV 25. We are brought to you by Russell & Associates and coming to you from the Latch Development Center at 111 Riverfront Street in downtown Winona. Coach Bergstrom, I guess the first question is, now that you've played away, you've played home, you've won, you've lost, how do you feel your message and your style as a head coach is adapting to the team that you have this season?
Well, I've been impressed since day one, all the way back in January, how open to tweaks in the culture have been handled and embraced, and I think we got coachable guys on our team, and that's a credit to Coach Sawyer and the culture that had been created, and they were ready to work and be coachable, which is to do what's asked of the new staff, and I think from the feedback that we have gotten really throughout our time, not just in the season, has been very positive in how we have set our standards and keep people accountable to the standards of the culture of the team. And that comes with difficult conversations, and it comes with difficult outcomes, and that isn't always fun, but you can't base your decision making off what's fun. And I think human nature pushes us to comfort, where we gotta fight against human nature in coaching, because you're trying to get them, and we are getting them to perform at a higher level than that. And very thankful for how open to that new message our guys have been.
Kind of along that same line, 3 games into your head coaching career now, how do you feel the head coaching role has fit you, and how have you been able to adapt to it?
Yeah, I think it was probably 3-4 years ago that I was pretty confident that I wanted to be a head coach. I'd been a coordinator and position coach my whole career, and found myself leaning more towards the bigger picture. Still love the coaching and the nitty-gritty of technique, and I do love that, and I miss parts of that because you don't have time for everything. So I'm still doing a lot of the same things, just on a bigger role, and the platform is bigger, and it doesn't make it right or wrong, it's just different. And I do think that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be the exact time and place and with the people, I just feel a huge sense of peace that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I love waking up and going to work every day. Like, to me, when you find something you're passionate about, you're not going to work. You're going to make an impact. And whether we win or lose games, we can accomplish the purpose of what we're out here to do, is to impact their life. And yeah, we got goals of winning every game, and we got a goal of winning this week. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, greater than anybody outside of us could put on us.
So now you'll be coaching your team coming off of a loss. Does that change the way that you coach at all, or do you think everything kind of stays the same as you prepare for a home game?
I think the big things are going to stay the same. We're not going to panic in how we prepare. Losing games happens, and if we panic and change everything, the guys are like, well, did we really believe in what we were doing then if we're changing everything? But we do need to look at what wasn't working and tweak things, and whether that be how we teach something, how we keep people accountable to something. And coaching, I feel like we either coached it that way or we're allowing it to happen. So the things that didn't go right, we start with us. Okay, were we coaching it? Were we inadvertently coaching something the wrong way, or are we allowing it to happen based off of the standards that we have in place? And so we start with us. And so we'll make minor changes, but the players aren't going to walk into practice and feel like, whoa, this is way different. That's not what we're about. We believe in how we do it.
All right. The team you're preparing for this week is Minnesota State Moorhead. They are 1-2 coming into this game. They lost to Augie and Sioux Falls, who are both undefeated. They beat Upper Iowa, who hasn't had a win yet.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about them, and how do you game plan for them this week?
Well, I have a ton of respect. We have a ton of respect for Moorhead and their coaching staff and the way that they play. They are going to be where they're supposed to be. They'll be disciplined. They'll be well coached. They will play an up-tempo offense like we had this week, and they're gonna be just really, really sound and play hard on defense. And I know a number of their coaches, and I know who they are as men and how they coach. So we're looking forward to a good game, because they're going to come in here and go out on the road, and they got nothing to lose. So ton of respect for them.
All right, 2 more questions before we end here today. First is kind of a basic injury-wise. How are you coming into this week?
Overall, pretty good. We have a few that we're waiting to hear back on, whether somebody will be ready to come back this week or it might be a week. But all things said, it's football, so some are going to happen, and it lends itself to our mantra of next man up. If somebody is out for a week or out for the season, well, that's why there's a depth chart. And as hard as it is to see that individual go through what they're going through and not be able to play, that it happens in football. And that's why you got to be ready to step up into the next role. You can't wait till you get up there to get ready. You got to be ready and then move up.
All right, and then last, for people that want more information about Warrior football, you have the luncheon coming up this week. I'll give you a chance to plug that.
Yeah, every Thursday at the Riverport Hotel, just due to the generosity of the Rivers family. Starting about 11:45, the doors open and the food line opens up. It's an optional $10 meal, and you can just come and hang out and watch highlights and hear from our staff. This week it'll be Coach Olson, our offensive line coach, and a few of our offensive linemen as guests, but from about 11:45 to 1 o'clock on Thursdays at the Riverport.
All right.
Love to see anybody there.
Absolutely. All right, thank you for joining us this week, and good luck this week against Moorhead.
Thank you, Justin.
All right, and that's a game that you can watch right here on HBC TV 25. Kickoff is at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Thank you for joining us here. We'll see you next week here on HBC TV 25.